Apple Blitz with Anthony Rivardo and Matt O'Leary.
What is going on? Matt O'Leary alongside Anthony Rivardo for another episode of Big Apple Blitz. What's going on, Anthony? How are you this Monday?
I'm doing great this Monday morning. Not much going on in the NFL right now. Starting to get into that slow period, but OTA's right around the corner. And then soon after that, of course, training camp. And before you know it, we're at the start of the regular season. So it's kind of nice to enjoy a little bit of that downtime, talk about speculation for what the team's going to do this upcoming season, any of the other storylines coming out ahead of OTAs. So very enjoyable time, and I'm excited to go ahead and dive into it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit looking towards the future right now, which is okay. You know, you just finished the NFL draft. It was a long marathon on that. So rookie camps, OTAs, all that good stuff. But kind of wanted to start here with both the future at both the Jets and Giants quarterback position. There was a way too early mock draft, which is, you know, not surprising seeing those come out already, but had the Giants going the quarterback route, I wouldn't imagine that you're too surprised to see that in a way too early mock.
Not surprised at all when you consider the fact that the Giants tried to sell the entire farm for Drake May. They were unsuccessful, but the line of thinking now is Daniel Jones is on a really short leash. This upcoming season probably won't fare well for him, even if he gets banged up at all. Maybe he gets benched because of that injury clause. His future is just so uncertain. And because the New York Giants roster, if we're being honest about it, is far from competing near the top of the league, you have to assume that we'll be in striking distance for a top quarterback next offseason. And you'd have to imagine that 1 year from now, we're talking about the future of the New York Giants and who's playing under center in 2025. But anything could change. Maybe Daniel Jones surprises me. I highly doubt it. But yeah, I'm assuming QB is going to be the way we go next year.
You're not buying into the year 6 leap, the very common year 6 jump into stardom?
Isn't it, like, as ridiculous as that sounds, there are people who believe that. And isn't that just crazy? Like, I know you coming from a Jets fan, different perspective, outside looking in. I feel like Giants fans only listen to Giants fans, so they don't understand how ridiculous they sound to fans from the outside looking in. But a year 6 leap, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it definitely is a bit much. I don't know how that's still a thing, but I'm with you. Although, what's your take on Carson Beck? Because I have a reason where I think he would be off my draft board, and I wanted to show you why.
Yeah, off the draft board is interesting. I definitely am curious to hear about that. But what I'll say about Carson Beck is I think that this is a player who put up some really good numbers last season, and it was really his first full season as a starter with Georgia. Leads the SEC in passing yards, and I think that if he turns in a really good 2024 campaign, he's probably shooting up the draft boards and finding himself as QB1 and a potential number 1 pick. There's no Caleb Williams in this draft class. Nobody who's a year out expected to go number 1 and is the bona fide superstar of the class. We don't have that. So now we have to evaluate this 2024 season, who really rises, who plays well. And Carson Beck has a lot to lose and a lot to gain. You know, if he really has another great year, he could solidify himself up at the top. But I'm curious to know why you might take him off the board.
So I am taking him off the draft board because my question to you is, have we ever seen Carson Beck and Sid the Sloth from the Ice Age in the same room at the same time?
Okay, so not to really rip into the... Okay, nice.
I mean, it's uncanny. What are we talking about here, Anthony? This is the same. It's the same guy. Convince me that this isn't the same person.
No, it's rather similar. Striking similarities in their appearance. No, it is funny though, because I was texting my co-host on Fireside Giants, Alex, about Carson Beck last week, and I was like, "Yeah, man, he's got a good arm. He ran a pro-style offense, put up a bunch of passing yards, but I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't know if he has the looks of a franchise quarterback. I've never seen a franchise quarterback that ugly, so I do wonder if Carson Beck can be a franchise quarterback just based on his appearance.
It's so funny the things that people look into. Obviously, a little tongue in cheek there, but
for sure,
you also don't want to go the polar opposite end of the spectrum, because then you get like the pretty boy Zach Wilson who comes into the league, and we know how that one ended. So I could talk from the other side of it, or even, I mean, not a first rounder, but Christian Hackenberg looked the part, but not a legitimate quarterback prospect. So who knows? Maybe ugly's good.
Yeah, I mean, looks aren't everything. It's a phrase that we have to live by in life. So looks are definitely not everything with these quarterbacks. I mean, we've definitely seen 6'5" signal callers who played under center step into the league and absolutely stink. There's so many different draft busts throughout history that aren't just the wrong size, shape, and look. A lot of them look the part and they don't succeed. So Carson Beck on the field, though, does look the part. He plays like an NFL quarterback, in my opinion. I am pretty high on him early on. Obviously, got to see how he plays this upcoming season. But like I said, I think that he's in the driver's seat. He has more to lose than to gain. I think that if he just stays constant and continues to play at this high level, he will be a top 5 pick. If he doesn't play well, he's probably falling pretty far down the boards. But like I said, he's playing in the SEC. It's a pro style offense. He takes snaps under center. He throws well from the pocket, actually plays really well from the pocket, doesn't rely on his legs much, and has a pretty strong arm. There's other things that he needs to clean up. But again, with experience, getting a second season starting under his belt, if this guy throws 40 touchdown passes in the SEC this season, he's the number 1 pick. Like, that's almost a lock. So again, whether or not he's a fit for the New York Giants, it's really tough to say these things a year out. But taking a look at these early mock drafts that have the Giants going QB, it makes sense. And Carson Beck is, in my opinion, for Giants fans watching this who might be looking ahead to next season, Beck is the name to watch at the quarterback position.
Yeah, I think so too. When it's all said and done, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, a lot can change, from a year from, or almost a year from now. In 11 months, we're going to be going over it. But you got like Shedeur Sanders, Quinn Ewers, like and Carson Beck feel like, at least to me right now, the front runners as like the top 3 guys in the class in whatever order you want to put them in. And that could change very quickly depending on how these guys play. And not necessarily Carson Beck related, but future quarterback related. And we were, half joking with the look of the franchise quarterback. But what about, have you seen the Shedeur Sanders on Twitter the last week or so? Would that potentially scare you off as a Giants fan who could be potentially looking for their next guy in 2025? Does Shedeur Sanders off the field, how he handles himself, does that worry you?
100%. Yes, it does. I mean, honestly, that one tweet that he had that really made the rounds, I think that's enough to get him off of a lot of teams' draft boards. Like, that shows a clear lack of leadership and class. And for the New York Giants, who had Eli Manning as their quarterback for about 2 decades, class is everything to this team. They value that very much. I mean, you could argue that that's one of the main reasons why Daniel Jones is still here, because he's classy and he's respectful and he knows how to handle the media and he knows how to be a good teammate, all of that stuff. A guy like Shedeur Sanders, and listen, I don't know him personally, so I won't dive too deep in, but just that one tweet, someone who has a tweet like that out there and has now a public behavior where he dissents he's got dissentment towards teammates and can be spiteful in the media. That's something I just think the New York Giants are going to look at as a massive waving red flag and completely avoid. And I think that multiple teams are going to feel that way.
Yeah, that was strange. And as I said, it was slightly off topic as we were talking about the Carson Beck in a mock draft. But as we said, the very real chance the Giants are looking at a quarterback, and that I just thought that was handled weird. But do you think now it was a trade up for Carson Beck, right? Like in this mock, it wasn't like a stick and pick scenario. I guess, they tried to trade up this year for their quarterback. Would you be against trying to move up, or are you comfortable giving up the draft capital to get it up in the draft for one guy in particular?
Yeah, I'm comfortable moving up if the guy is the right guy. Like if Joe Shane and Brian Dable are convinced, I mean, if they're still here next year, that's all remains to be seen. But let's assume all things remain constant. But if they believe that Carson Beck is a franchise quarterback, that's the guy they want to build a franchise around. You have to be aggressive and go up there and get him. And that's been the belief that Joe Schoen has always subscribed to. It's the one he subscribed to in Buffalo, which landed Buffalo Josh Allen, who we all know is a superstar. It's the belief that they had this year. They had one guy in particular that they were willing to trade up for. That was Drake May. The rest of the guys I thought weren't worthy, so they didn't force it. And I do agree with that logic. While I was okay with J.J. McCarthy at 6 if they went that way, the fact that the Giants internal organization members didn't believe in him with the number 6 overall pick, I'm okay with them passing on him, because the worst thing that you can do as an NFL team, in my opinion, is force yourself to like a quarterback and force yourself to take one. Again, I think that is why Daniel Jones is here. I think they forced themselves to take him in 2019. They set up the roster in a way where they knew Eli Manning was about to retire. They wanted to get a quarterback to play under Eli Manning at first before taking over. So they forced it in 2019. They should have waited a year. 2020, Justin Herbert came out, Tua Tagovailoa came out. And 2019, Herbert is who the Giants wanted. He decided to go back to school for another year, which really sucks. I wish that we could live on the alternate timeline where Herbert was a New York Giant. But unfortunately, it isn't that timeline. But that is the argument that you make here for the Giants to kind of support their decision not to take a QB this offseason. Don't force it. Wait for the right opportunity and the right time, then go get your guy. And hopefully for the Giants next year, that'll be the time. And if not, then F it, man. We're back on the Manning train in 2026. Bring Arch home.
Arch Manning. And then maybe, you might have that year 7, Daniel Jones. Yeah. You're not getting out of that contract after this year. Locking it in for 2025. Keep the train rolling. But Giants aren't the only team with a young quarterback, Anthony. We know the New York Jets drafted Jordan Travis, the local to you product. I'm going to keep doing that anytime anyone has any relation to Florida, they're local to Anthony. But he was asked recently about potentially being the successor to Aaron Rodgers, and like if that's something he thinks about. And he's like, yeah, absolutely, that is something that he thinks about. And I think that's like the right mindset to have. I think you have to have that confidence in yourself. There's a very fine line between confidence and cockiness, but how he said it to me leaned more on the side of confidence than going over the line, being like, yeah, I'm going to start. I'm going to be the best I ever was. It wasn't like that. It was kind of just like, yeah, I could see myself doing that one day. And while it's very, very challenging for a 5th round pick to eventually develop and be that guy, for a very rare time in recent Jets history with a quarterback, I feel like the Jets have put their young quarterback in a relatively good spot to be successful, because they're not, drafting him and being like, you need to be the savior of this team. We have nothing else on this roster. The roster's good, and there's 2 good veteran quarterbacks in front of him.
Yeah, that's totally right. I think that Jordan Travis fell into the perfect situation. This is what I've been telling my friends who are actual friends of Jordan Travis. Obviously they know I do sports media and all that. They were like, hey, what's your take on Jordan Travis to the Jets? I'm like, guys, you should be really happy for your friend here. This is the best situation possible for him, because he has no no expectations to get in there too soon. There's no time limit on when he needs to develop by. He has all the time in the world to just sit, grow, develop behind Aaron Rodgers. There's a bunch of weapons around him, a lot of talent. They've actually added talent to the offensive line as well. He can take his time recovering from the injury, doesn't need to rush to get back onto the football field. Just take his time and grow and develop. And when Aaron Rodgers does retire, move on, whatever happens, Jordan Travis is going to get the first crack at that starting job. He'll be the first in line. The Jets will give him the opportunity, unless they're in position to land a top quarterback in the draft or something like that. But you have to assume the Jets are going to be winning football games. They're never going to be in that opportunity, or never going to have that opportunity while Jordan Travis is still on this roster. So whenever Rodgers leaves, Travis has an opportunity to really take that starting job. He'll get the first crack at it, and all he has to do is string together a couple good games, and the job is his. That's really how it goes in the NFL. If you can go 3 to 4 games, pick up some wins, and play really good football, they're going to give you an extra season to see what you have and fully develop you. So he's got his ticket, basically. He's got his foot in the door. And again, there's just no rush for him. I think this is a perfect fit for the team, for Travis. And you could see the potential there. He was very good for FSU. And I think this is a perfect marriage.
Yeah, our guy Johnny Boy's hanging out with us. He said Travis Presser was great, and he should be confident. I think he wants to be a leader in the locker room. And I mean, again, who better to kind of sit and learn from than Tyrod Taylor and Aaron Rodgers? I know, Aaron Rodgers, like around the league, he's very well respected by players and coaches. Like a lot of players really like him. I know that he rubs some of the media and some fans the wrong way, and I get that. But around the league, very respected. And Tyrod, like, you're not a backup quarterback in the league for as long as he has. One, because he's talented, but two, like, also another good locker room guy. And I know you've seen a lot of him with the Giants over the last couple of years. I'm sure you would agree that he's kind of going to come in, be on the quiet side, do his job, and just, perform and help any young guy along.
100%. And I think that Jordan Travis, everything that I know about him from people who know him personally, the best leader. Like, everybody absolutely loves the guy. They're all rooting for his success. And I think that's one of those things that has already kind of shined through in his brief time with the Jets already. He's already proven to be quite a leader and a guy that's just very easy to root for. Coming off of that injury was devastating. It's one of the reasons that the hip drop rule is now in place, why the hip drop tackle is banned. He got injured on one of those scary hip drop plays and really gruesome injury, but he's fighting back and he's recovering. And I just can't wait for him to come back. I can't wait to see what he is able to do. And, I don't know if he's going to be able to play in this preseason. Maybe we wait till the 2025 preseason and we get a little bit of Jordan Travis action, but I'll be sat and seated with some popcorn. I'm excited to see it. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. And this year too, I think we still don't know where he is with the injury yet. Like, Saleh and Jordan Travis both spoke this week, and they both sound like relatively confident that he's going to be able to, come in and play at some point this year. I really want to see him in training camp and the preseason if he's up for it. Obviously, I'm not saying rush him back so we could see him, but if he's up for it, I would really like to see him get a long extended look in those preseason games, because Aaron's not. Maybe he plays a drive or two. He's not going to play a ton. We'll see Tyrod, but you already kind of know what he is at this level. But getting Jordan Travis a look is going to be something that I know excites a lot of Jet fans. Granted, again, it's going to be in second halves of preseason games against third stringers and practice squad guys. So you take some of the results with a grain of salt, but still, you kind of want to see what you have in your investment, even if it is very early in the process.
Yeah, and if he's able to get out there onto the preseason fields, you want to see that happen, but you also can't rush it, with such an injury like that. Got to take your time and not try and force Jordan Travis onto the field. It's very possible that we don't see him until 2025. I'm sure that he'll be ready to at least do some practicing and training camp. I think that I know he was doing the bike recently at the voluntary workouts or the rookie mini camp, whatever's going on for the Jets right now. He was on the bike warming up, so his legs have some mobility and he's able to use them to some extent. I don't know if he's running or sprinting yet. I'm not sure, but hopefully the recovery goes well and he is able to get out there in August. I think that would be, like I said, something to definitely keep an eye on.
Now, a fair question here from Johnny. He goes, Matt and Anthony, do you think does his measurements concern you guys, his height, weight, and possible arm strength? So if you look at it, he is, I believe, here we go. 17th percentile in height at 6'1" and 3 percentile in weight as he's just over 200 pounds. So he is a little bit on the slender side, and his arm strength is certainly something that's comes into question. But I think if he had the arm strength and the size, he's going in the first round. He's not going in round 5. So there are going to be some legit red flags for day 3 quarterbacks, and you kind of just have to hope that he's not limited because of his size or the arm strength. He's kind of got to learn how to play in spite of those things.
Yeah, I mean, the talent and ability is definitely there. Of course, you can have questions about size, strength, all that stuff. I don't think you have questions about athleticism and mobility. I think Jordan Travis, what he did at Florida State, you could turn on some highlights and see him break some ankles, break some tackles, break through some sacks. The guy is definitely mobile and athletic, and I think that he's accurate, and I think he is a good quarterback. You're going to have question marks about his durability at that size, about his ability to just play at the highest level, sure. But again, that's why you're so excited about his opportunity to sit and wait. He doesn't have to get in there immediately. He can learn how to better use his size to his advantage in some ways at the NFL level. So sure, it concerns me to an extent, but the expectations are already low for a 5th-round quarterback as it is. So it's not like I am expecting this guy to come in and be the successor to Aaron Rodgers. I'm just excited for him to have the opportunity and the chance to prove himself as the successor. So not overly concerned, but not overly confident either. It's just like I'm just happy that he's in a good situation and hoping that he makes the most of it.
Right. It's we do have to remember, like, as excited as we might be about him, he is a day 3 prospect for a reason. So if for whatever reason, like, he doesn't become the next guy, I'm sure part of the reason would be because of the arm strength or the size. But, there's outliers who have come in and played very well. People were worried about Kyler Murray's size, and he's figured it out to be successful at this level. Russell Wilson's not exactly a big, tall quarterback, and he had a lot of success early in his career. So there are examples where that doesn't become a factor. But I mean, if things don't work, that I'm sure people will point to that. And that's also a reason, again, like we said, why he goes on day 3 and not in one of the first 2 rounds.
Right. That's exactly right. And to be fair to him, if he was 3 inches taller and he didn't have that injury, I think he's a day 2 pick and not a day 3 pick. And I think, maybe even had a chance at pushing into the first round, depending on how tall he really was in this alternate timeline. But again, we are in the reality where he's a 5th-round pick, so the expectations are low. At the very least, what the Jets have here is a backup quarterback for the next 4 years on a cost-controlled rookie contract, and that's something in and of itself to be happy about. And if he ends up becoming more than that, you're thrilled. If he ends up becoming a quality backup for you for the long term, you're thrilled. If he ends up competing as a starter one day, you're over the moon. Rejoice. But expectations got to be low for a day 3 pick. And I think that what he's able to provide to this team already, in terms of his leadership and in terms of just giving them a little bit of security as a QB3, I think you're already happy with what you've got here.
Absolutely. Let's get into our next topic here, which is I have Gettleman's picture, but I forgot to change the caption on it. But anyway, Dave Gettleman called the media members clowns. So Dave Gettleman from the Clouds, I feel like we haven't heard from him in years, but he's back. He's got some thoughts on the media. What'd you make of Dave Gettleman's comments?
First and foremost, I make that he is projecting. The biggest clown himself calling media members clowns is, again, projection. The full quote is, he said, "I finally broke down and got a subscription to The Athletic, partly because it was $1 a month or $1 a month, but it's like anything else. You got this guy giving every team grades, but you've got to be kidding me. Who are you? What have you done? When have you put your nuts on the line?" But sadly, you got owners listening to these clowns and even GMs listening to these clowns. So he's taking aim at The Athletic and draft analysts at large, calling them clowns. Again, I think it's projecting. I also think that it's resentment because pretty much every year that Dave Gettleman was the GM, his draft classes were pretty poorly graded because he was very bad at drafting. He often reached on prospects. He missed on a lot of talent in middle rounds. They failed to develop that talent that they did find. Dave Gettleman was a historically bad general manager. The New York Giants reached 500 just once in his entire tenure as the general manager, and it only lasted 1 week in 2020, week 4, and every other week from then on, and prior to that, they had a losing record. So if you want to talk about clowns and historically bad, you're talking about Dave Gettleman. He's been in hiding for the last couple of years since he retired. All of a sudden, he crawls out of whichever cave that he's been dwelling in, and he decides to take aim at the media. The media is not the problem here. The media is not really the enemy. The media could praise you and do a lot of good for you if you do well at your job, like we've seen with Joe Schoen. Joe Schoen has earned so much credibility because he's so good with the media that even if the Giants are a disaster this year, he probably still won't get fired. Dave Gettleman is just a clown in and of himself. So, yeah, I take issue with what he said, and I think he's projecting, and I think that numbers speak for themselves. And Dave Gettleman's numbers are among the ugliest of all time for any general manager.
Yeah, not to bring up some bad memories for you here, but his records over that time with the Giants, 19-46, 5-11, 4-12, 6-10, and 4-13 before finally getting the boot. He did draft Dexter Lawrence, though. I mean,
yeah, good pick.
Yeah,
that was a good pick.
Unfortunately, though, the infamous stick and pick with Saquon 2 overall, not answering the phone calls for trade backs.
Yep.
Daniel Jones at 6 felt like a reach at the time and clearly hasn't worked out. Andrew Thomas, 4th overall, was another good one. Xavier McKinney was good. But you mentioned mid-round, like there's not a lot of names outside of round 1 that are great. Kadarius Toney, another Giants legend.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Kadarius Toney, and a real forgotten one, DeAndre Baker. New York Giants traded back up into the first round. And I think it was 2019.
Yes.
Yep. DeAndre Baker picked 31, I think, traded up for him. I think he was off the team going into year 2. He had a pretty bad incident off the field, and he was really bad on the field. Just a terrible draft selection. It seemed like we all know that scouting players, a lot of it, you also scout their character, and you got to really get to know them and make sure that they're going to not have any off the field issues. That was a big problem for Dave Gettleman. A lot of the guys that he drafted, a lot of the high profile guys that he drafted really struggled off the field to stay out of trouble and to continue their NFL careers. Kadarius Toney being one of them, DeAndre Baker being another. So just some really, really bad drafting. And the middle rounds were a freaking graveyard. I can name Darius Slayton, arguably Darnay Holmes, and Julian Love. Those are his 3 hits past the third round all time. But outside of those guys, I think he also drafted Xavier McKinney, so credit to that one as well. But anything outside of the first and second round, and again, his first round selections are pretty hit or miss. Anything out of the first or second round, graveyard. Absolutely terrible. Never got value from these guys. I remember Ellerson Smith, this edge rusher that they drafted. I want to say it was 2020, 4th round. He had a 7th round grade on pretty much every board. Immediately, I was like, awful pick. The worst pick possible. What is this? Guy never even played more than, I think, 20 snaps for the New York Giants. Like, this is what we're talking about here with Dave Gettleman. You want to talk about clowns. You want to talk about bad at your jobs. If you want to say that media personalities are bad at their jobs, man, you were really bad at your job. You put your nuts on the line, so to speak, and did it in the worst way possible. You got your nuts scathed over a pile of coal on fire. So, you know what? Dave Gettleman, I was so glad when he was gone, and I hate that he's even being brought up here. It makes me sick to my stomach that all these years later, I'm still talking about this clown.
Well, you know what? It should have been a dead giveaway that Dave Gettleman was not the guy. It's not the draft picks. It's not some of his comments, like we didn't sign him to trade him, the famous quote about Odell Beckham. It's using the Wii remote for the All 22 film, an all-time Dave Gettleman move.
Yeah, that's a classic. Like, that is a classic right there. What else can you say? That's just unreal. He's like an absolute dinosaur.
Wait, hold on. This is also an all-time picture as well. We'll pull this one up with the big binder and the laptop. I remember when this one popped up. This was, I think, the COVID draft, right?
Yeah, the COVID draft. The COVID draft was so interesting. Like, so interesting to see how each team handled it, because you had guys like Cliff Kingsbury in his mansion with like 18 monitors in front of him. You had certain teams that had just these super high-tech draft rooms, and then you had Dave Gettleman sitting in his living room with a binder the size of 3 Bibles. It's just ginormous. And I remember on that night during the draft, he had IT issues. Go figure. I mean, who didn't see that one coming? He had to have an IT man come into his house during the draft to fix his internet. Like, are you kidding me? How do you even get to that point? Just an absolute dinosaur, an unprepared, poorly executing GM who just did the devil's work to this organization for 4 years. And I'm glad you brought up the OBJ trade, because that was probably the most devastating moment of my teenage years watching the New York Giants. That was so painful. Odell Beckham Jr., I don't care what anybody says about him. Either you loved him or you hated him during his time with the Giants. But I'll tell you, one of my favorite all-time players, probably number 2 all-time behind Eli Manning. Like, I loved OBJ, and just to sign him to that contract and convince all the fans that you were continuing to build your franchise around him just to trade him. I mean, that right there, as soon as that happened, I was absolutely done with Dave Gettleman, and I didn't want anything to do with him going forward.
You're making me feel very old saying that was your teenage years for the. You're in high school for the Odell trade?
I was, yeah.
Oh man,
I remember. I'll never forget that day. I was sitting there, funny enough, playing some Madden in my room. scoring touchdowns with OBJ.
Little
And then
did
I
you know.
looked down at my phone, got a notification, dropped that controller on the floor, and my heart sunk, and I had to go outside and take a walk. And I was like hurt. Like it felt like you got dumped over text, like pain inside of me. It was so bad.
Okay. So I was fresh out of college working my first job. And I ran a college radio station, and I remember this one kid taped he was wearing he had an Odell Beckham jersey, and then he taped on the back traitor. And I was like, are you dumb? Like, this is not Odell's fault. He didn't request a trade. The Giants just traded him to trade him. Like, what are you doing? And he's like, yeah, it was probably a bad move. You think? How are you going to take the Giants side on this one? And I wasn't even a Giants fan, but it's like, this is crazy town. We're simping over Dave Gettleman today.
Yeah. I mean, there were some delusional Giants fans, man, that just because the guy is the GM of the Giants, he can do no wrong. And we've seen where that gets this team when you just blindly trust general managers or coaches. It's terrible. And another aspect of Dave Gettleman we didn't even touch on, all the head coaches and coaches that he hired and fired. I mean, how did he make it through all that? He had Shermer fired almost immediately. Joe Judge fired almost immediately. I mean, come on now. It's just unbelievable. And yeah, that OBJ trade, man, it sucks because Odell really wanted to have his entire career with the New York Giants. He wanted to win Super Bowls there. He like really looked up to Eli Manning. He had a great relationship with him. He wanted to be this franchise's next Eli, and Dave Gettleman just ruined it. And I do believe, I know you say the Giants won the trade. They got the first round pick for Dexter Lawrence eventually. And, Odell didn't really go on to have the best career, but I do personally believe had the Giants kept Odell and fixed the quarterback position after Eli left, like I think that OBJ would have continued his legacy and become an all-time great. It's just all the changing in all these different organizations and the injuries really held him back. But yeah, I think that Dave Gettleman really ruined a special thing that this franchise had, and did that quite a few times during his short time here.
Johnny's back and says, it's the truth. The New York media is super harsh on players, coaches, and the organizations. We expect championships no matter what the situation is. Not everyone is made to play in New York. I think some of this is true. I think sometimes we go a little bit too far, and I think that's fair. But that comment coming from Dave Gettleman, who was, as we met, what was his record for 19-46, was at 500 once over his 4 years with the Giants, and he did a lot of damage. Like, just not the guy to be making those comments.
No, not the guy. Signed Kenny Galladay as well. I mean, the list just goes on and on. Every move that you want to bring up over the past, 5 years that the New York Giants made that was really poor, Dave Gettleman was behind it. So,
who was the Patriots tackle they gave a boatload of money to?
Nate Solder. Too, right? Yeah, that was terrible. Yep, that was Dave Gettleman. That was one of his first big moves, is signing Nate Solder that contract. And on the off topic, Nate Solder, I got beef with him personal. He was very rude to me the one time that I met him in person at a charity event. But
we gotta get the story. You can't just sprinkle that out.
Nah, I don't know. It's just all right. Well, the brief story is Tom called for a charity event. I went up to Nate Solder, asked him, hey, can I ask you a couple questions, interview you? Everybody there was taking football questions. So I was, asking them questions about football. And so I asked him a softball question about football. And he's massive man, 6'8", just looks down at me. Again, I'm in high school. I was doing this stuff back when I was in high school. And he just looks down at me and he's like, just in the most direct tone, was like, I thought you were going to ask me questions about the event. I'm not answering football questions. And I was just like, okay, man, so sorry. And then I had to ask him these other questions I had planned, but it was just like the way that he said it and the way that he was just standing over me. And it just was so unfriendly and rude. And I got to get back to what Johnny Boy said about the New York media being really harsh on players, coaches. My new hot take is that the New York media, maybe not the media, but the fans are no longer harsh enough, because if they were harsh enough, Daniel Jones would not still be here. Daniel Jones gets coddled. Dave Gettleman got coddled. His leash was way too long. If we were harsh enough, like we used to be, like when we were calling for Eli Manning to be traded as soon as he stepped on the field, like if we were trying to kill him the season after he won a Super Bowl because he threw an interception, or if we were calling for Tom Coughlin's job throughout the entire time that he was here, despite the fact that he won 2 Super Bowls and was an excellent head coach, if we were still that harsh, I don't think that this New York Giants team would be in the absolute shambles that it's been for the last decade. My hot take is that we are no longer harsh enough, and we got to get back to being the bully mentality, the angriness, the never happy fans that we were in the 2000s. Because man, we watched Daniel Jones have a 2-touchdown, 200-yard performance, and Giants fans think he's a franchise quarterback. If Eli Manning had a win, if he won a game 17-10 and threw 2 touchdowns, 200 yards, everybody would say Eli Manning's washed. What is this? This is not my franchise quarterback. Daniel Jones does it. Everybody's like, just give him the weapons, watch him go. Franchise quarterback. Huge difference. So that's my hot take. We're not harsh enough anymore.
No, but then you got some guys on the Jets beat, and I'm sure it's the same way for the Giants, are just miserable and are, try to skew things negatively. And I do think that does exist. But like, we got Brian Costello beefing with the Jets because of the Taylor Ham story. And it's like, this is the guy we're supposed to be afraid of. The guy's angry about Taylor Ham. Like, he's just a dinosaur. No one takes him seriously. So like, at the same time, I always feel like I don't think it really is the big bad media, because I think a lot of those who skew so negative and are like, have the reputation as being like kind of the jerks, are way too critical. Nobody really takes them that seriously anyway.
That's true. The number one guy that comes to mind for the New York Giants in that vein is Pat Leonard. He is public enemy number one amongst Giants beat writers, and he is the ultimate negative Nancy. He is very overly critical in many ways, and because of that, a lot of people don't take him seriously. He releases a report, and people say, not true. Pat Leonard wrote it. He's a hack. And I don't think that's fair to him. But, I guess there are some media members who are still super harsh and critical. But I guess more so my point, the hot take that I have is that the fans are no longer harsh enough. Maybe the media is still harsh, but the fans need to get back to being that angry group that we used to be. Like, the New York Giants fans used to be brutal towards their own players. And obviously sometimes it goes too far, and I don't want that to be the case, but being critical of Daniel Jones is okay. On Giants Twitter, if you're critical of Daniel Jones, there is an angry mob coming after you for being critical of him. That's not how it's supposed to work. The angry mob is supposed to be going at the quarterback and pushing him to be better, not going after the guys who criticize the quarterback. So it's all backwards now. Giants land is a wasteland, and man, I miss the glory days of Eli Manning throwing 3 touchdowns, 300 yards, and a win, and it not being good enough.
There we go. I love that. I want to talk some Malachi Corley and Aaron Rodgers to close out the show. So we mentioned I believe right after the draft, we talked about the guest house comments with Malachi and Aaron Rodgers. But some good news. Aaron Rodgers and Malachi Corley have supposedly been texting a lot. And Aaron Rodgers did, in fact, invite him to stay in the guest house during training camp. And going to be honest with you, I absolutely love that for a rookie wide receiver here. Someone who is trying to build a relationship with their quarterback. And while, yes, skill set on the field obviously matters a great deal, if you have a good personal relationship with the quarterback, like, there's going to be almost that, like, you don't even think about it. It's just in the back of your head. Like, oh, I trust Malachi in this spot. We have that relationship. I know where he's going to be. I'm going to throw him the ball in the big spot. Like, having that relationship, I think, matters a ton. I think we should look at this as a big deal.
No, it's really important, developing relationships between quarterbacks and receivers. And to the credit, I know I was just harsh on Daniel Jones, and I will continue to be. He has a great relationship with Darius Slayton, and Darius Slayton and him have spent a lot of time together, hanging out, working out all throughout the off seasons. And if there's been one wide receiver that Daniel Jones has depended on and has thrown the ball to and, gotten the most productivity out of, or production out of, it's been Darius Slayton. So you can take that as an example. Eli Manning used to work out tirelessly in the offseason with OBJ, and even going back further to all the other playmakers like Victor Cruz. Eli always held passing training events during the offseason with his playmakers, always developing that relationship, even the guys who are scraping the bottom of the barrel on the roster. Eli Manning always did that stuff. I think it's great leadership. It's really important to develop those relationships. And one last comparison I'll draw, it kind of reminds me of this current New York Rangers team that's going so deep in the playoffs, just won game 1 against the Carolina Hurricanes. If you know any stories about that, guys like Matt Rempe and Will Cooley. Will Cooley didn't think that he was going to make the team And he thought that he was just going to be on the roster at the beginning of the season and then probably sent down to the AHL. So he was like, I'm just going to stay. I don't remember if it was Trocheck or the Kreiters. He was like, I'm going to stay there for the first couple weeks. And then, when I get sent down, I'll leave. Never got sent down. It was on the so he's just been living. I think it's the Kreiters. He's just been living with the Kreiters the entire season, and their relationship has become very important to the success of the team. So I think that it is true. Sometimes you get these guys living together. And last thing before I hand it back to you, I'm going off on these tangents. The Giants used to have their training camps at Albany, and they would all stay in bunks and basically do like a summer retreat together, and they would all live in these bunk rooms. And it really, again, another moment where you could see these relationships develop and these players play better for each other. So I'm a big believer in this. I think it could be huge for Corley and for Rogers.
Johnny says, sorry, Matt, but go Rangers. Yes, I'm sure you and Anthony both in on that one, a big game one win. But that it's so true. And that's really pretty common in hockey. You see a lot of the young guys come in and stay with the older players. I believe it was when Barzal was young on the Islanders. He stayed with like Dennis Seidenberg for like the first couple of years that he was here on the island. But that's really a common thing. But it does build that relationship, which really matters, right? Like you have to on the ice, like you need to know where your line mates are going to be and all that. You need that chemistry. Same thing with a quarterback and a wide receiver. You need that built-in chemistry so you know where your guy's going to be. It doesn't necessarily matter how talented the wide receiver is if you're not on the same page. Like how many times do we see the quarterback and wide receiver going off on the sideline after an interception, and it's like they ran the wrong option route. One thought he was going to cut inside and he went deep, or whatever the case is. Having that relationship as with your quarterback, especially someone like Aaron Rodgers, who, like, let's be honest, usually skews more towards the veterans because they kind of know all these things already rather than, a rookie who kind of has to be brought along. But I think it kind of just expedites that process a little bit. That's all.
I agree. And yeah, relationships are everything. When you want to talk about football, it's a relationships business in many ways. And it's just important for Corley, I think, as a rookie, third round rookie. The expectations are pretty high for Corley in comparison to most third round rookies, I would say, because the Jets took their wide receiver in the third round. There was speculation, would they trade up? Would they take one at 10? There was a lot of talk about them getting a playmaker for Rodgers. Corley is that playmaker that they got in the draft. So everybody's expecting him to pretty much step in and make an instant impact as a rookie. It's hard to do that if you don't have a good relationship with the QB and the QB doesn't trust you. But Rodgers will have trust in Corley and will have a good relationship with him and will be able to depend on him in big moments. And I think that's important in terms of getting him the ball during key moments and keeping him confident throughout the regular season.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw, Anthony, the Jets put out these documentaries. I believe they're called Flight on their YouTube. They changed the name. It's either Flight or One Jets Drive. It changes like every other year. But moral of the story, in the most recent episode, they had like a behind the scenes look in the draft room, and Douglas was trying to trade up from around, I believe it was Washington, who had pick 45 in the draft. And the two guys that he was targeting was Malachi Corley, 1, and then Roman Wilson was number 2. Roman Wilson ends up going a little bit later than Malachi Corley, but definitely was trying to move up, relatively early in that second round, gets Malachi at the top of the third. And I know some fans are gonna be like, well, you got to temper expectations because he's a third round pick. I get that, but I also think he's someone who's going to have not a huge role where he's like a number 1 receiver, but I think he's going to be a useful depth piece for this team in year 1.
Yeah, and at the very least, that he's going to be your gadget player for certain plays and for certain situations. So he's going to be on the field. He's going to make some sort of an impact during his rookie season. It's just about how much of an impact, how effective is he as that gadget player and on those plays, and can he develop into more than a gadget player? Because that's really the question mark with Corley. But in the third round, if you can get a useful gadget player long term, that's a hit. You like that in the third round. You hope that he becomes more, and that's going to be the thing with Corley. But as a gadget player, I think he'll make an instant impact, and just hopefully he continues to develop and makes even more of an impact down the line.
Let's close with this question from Johnny, who chimes in and says, as a Jets fan, seeing the young Padme want to become close to his Jedi Master is huge to learn the force of the NFL. I'm hyped for this season. Pause. Put a pin in that. Are you a Star Wars guy?
Yeah, I'm a pretty huge Star Wars guy.
Okay. Well, then you and Johnny are not going to be happy to hear this. But the only reason I've ever seen Star Wars is because I lost a sports bet, and if I lost, I would agreed with my buddy who I did a college radio show with that I would then watch all of the Star Wars because I've never seen them. So I've only seen all of them once.
Do you like them?
I like 5 and 6 the best. I thought the 4 was a little boring in the beginning. The only prequel one I really liked was the third one.
Yeah, that's the consensus.
Okay.
It's different though because I grew up with 1, 2, and 3, the prequels. Like that was all that was Star Wars for me growing up. So, and so I love those movies and a nostalgia factor, but not necessarily viewing them as great cinema. Although I do think 5 is great cinema, and I absolutely love Empire Strikes Back. I think it's phenomenal.
Okay, so 5 was my favorite. Knobcraft just wants to set up. He goes, "You're normal, Matt." So just wanted to look that. But anyway, the question is, for both teams, which room could still use more help at this point? We'll do Giants first. What spot are you looking at to maybe add some depth before the season starts?
Cornerback. I think that the Giants could still use some more depth there. I like Andrew Phillips in the 3rd round, but I think he's probably going to play the nickel. And I still think the depth is a bit shaky there because if Phillips gets hurt, Cordell Flott, is he playing inside or outside? Well, now he's going to have to play inside if Andrew Phillips gets hurt. And then on the outside, if that's where Phillips plays, who's behind him? I guess Nick McLeod. Do you trust Nick McLeod? You've got Trey Hawkins as well, 6th-round pick from last year, who didn't develop the way we thought he would. It's just thin in the secondary. So I think between now and the start of the season, got to bring in some sort of talent at cornerback. And maybe you might also throw in their tight end. Giants obviously drafted Theo Johnson, Daniel Bellinger as well, but those are the 2 guys that I think you can actually depend on playing this year if Darren Waller retires. So maybe adding in a 3rd tight end who can put up 20 receptions in a season, not so bad. So I'd say those are the 2 spots. And of course, quarterback. Anything that you can do to get Daniel Jones off this team, I'm all ears.
There we go. For the Jets, I would say 2 spots still stand out. Not like huge gaping issues, but I think some interior offensive line depth would be really good to add. Right now, their top backup interior offensive lineman is Wes Schweitzer. So if they brought back like Connor McGovern, who started at center for them the last couple of years, I'd be good on that. They signed him to like a 1-year deal, a little less than $2 million last year. If they do something similar at this point, I'd be okay with that. And then for me, like maybe safety. They have, I like Chuck Clark a lot, but coming off the ACL is there's a little bit of a question mark there. And you have Tony Adams, who was okay last year. He was undrafted, free agent that in year 2 got a starting job and was okay, but not a ton of depth there. So I would say safety and interior offensive line are the 2 spots for the Jets. And Marist Old Boys is chirping me. It's Padawan, not Padamai. So I don't know, man. We should have Anthony read the questions then. I guess.
Yeah, that one probably would have been better for me to read. I'm a big Star Wars guy. I know it's a Padawan, Jedi Master, and a young Padawan. But Johnny Boy also said The Mandalorian and Ahsoka is must see. If you're a big Star Wars fan, they are definitely must see. But if you don't like Star Wars, I think you could probably still enjoy them. But they make a lot more sense if you know the whole story and you know Star Wars. But The Mandalorian, I think, is pretty fun regardless of whether or not you've seen Star Wars. So that's cool stuff if you're ever in the mood on Disney Plus and want to see some Star Wars action.
There we go. We'll have to keep that in mind. I've heard a lot of good things about The Mandalorian, but like I said, I don't really know. Not really like that into it. I'm not a big fantasy guy, so that doesn't really.
That's fair. Me. What's your favorite movie?
Actual answer or like my favorite shitty movie?
Actual answer. Give me the actual answer.
Okay. Oh man, good question. Kind of basic, but maybe Forrest Gump.
That's a good one. That's a great one. Most people don't actually give that answer.
But my favorite series that I fully admit is really shitty, but I'm a Fast and Furious stan. The first movie is actually actually good. Does it get crazy after? Yes, but I have a lot of fun with those movies.
Yeah, that's a franchise I've never gotten into. Haven't seen a single one.
Okay. Well, now we're gonna have to make a
into
bet at some point, and I'm gonna watch some Star Wars, and you get you on the Fast and Furious thing.
There we go. That sounds fun. And I'll just throw out there my favorite movie just to put everybody on to some peak cinema. The Nice Guys, Ryan Gosling, Russell Crowe, buddy cop comedy. Greatest movie of all time. I love it.
Okay. Johnny Boy says his favorite was The Sandlot. That's a good answer. I like The Sandlot.
It's a good one.
All right, that's going to do it for us on this Monday. Thank you guys for hanging out for some Giants, Jets, and movie talk on this lovely Monday. We'll be back on Thursday with more New York Jets and Giants, and who knows, maybe some movie talk. That's going to do it. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you are new here on Big Apple Blitz, Anthony's channel as well, and Fireside Giants. You got my channel and Talking Jets for more Jets coverage. That'll do it. I'm Matt. He's Anthony, and we'll catch you next time.